He threw her out, convinced she'd betrayed him. Years later, he found her again in a hospital, beside a child with eyes that mirrored his own. "Is he my son?" he asked, his voice trembling. And then, everything came to light. The lies, the hidden letters, and the love that even time couldn't erase. But now, is there still time to rebuild what was broken? Let's uncover the end of this story together. And tell me, would you forgive him? The hidden truth, a father's redemption. The house smelled of metal and dried flowers. The windows were open, but the air was still. The heat of Seville clung to the walls like contained rage, suffocating. Upstairs, Daniel Thorne paced his room, jaw clenched, eyes downcast, a pile of photos scattered across the bed. Each image was a blow, each silence a muffled scream. "I warned you, Sophia. I warned you I'd never stand for this." His voice cut like a knife dragged over concrete. There was no longer any hesitation. What love remained, if any, was crushed under tons of suspicion. Sophia stood at the door, trembling, her hands open at her sides, as if trying to contain an internal hurricane. "Daniel," her voice was almost a whisper, "look at me. At least do that." He didn't look at her. He snatched up the photos violently, as if that would protect him from facing her. The images, Sophia at a restaurant, Sophia smiling next to a man he didn't recognize, Sophia entering a building that wasn't her office, seemed to say everything Daniel feared to hear. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" He threw the photos onto the living room table with a dry thud. "Do you think I don't know what these pictures mean?" She approached, unafraid of his tone, but with a sadness that only one weary of defending herself can carry. "I don't know who took those photos, or where you got them, but I never betrayed you, Daniel. Never. Do you think you're going to convince me with that?" His laugh was bitter. "Right now?" In a corner of the living room, sitting like a statue, Mrs. Elena Thorne observed. Her eyes were cold, with a cynicism disguised as compassion. It was she who delivered the photos. It was she who, in a low voice and worried eyes, whispered to her son. Days before, "I don't want to see you made a fool of. Look at this, and draw your own conclusions." Sophia turned to her mother-in-law, her eyes filled with tears, but her voice still resisted. "You know this is a lie, that these photos prove nothing." Mrs. Elena crossed her legs elegantly. She took a sip of her now cold coffee, unhurried. "I know what I saw, and you know very well what I'm talking about. Crying won't help now, dear. Daniel has a right to know who he married." Sophia flinched, as if she had received an invisible slap. She looked back at Daniel, who clenched his fists tightly, his jaw throbbing. He still wasn't looking at her. "I never asked you to choose between your mother and me, Daniel. But now I'm asking you to look me in the face and tell me if you truly believe this." Silence. The kind that isn't empty. It's full. Full of pain, of pride, of things that hurt too much to be said. Daniel looked out the window. The orange light of dusk sliced through Seville's buildings like a warm razor. And it was only then, without looking at her, that he spoke. "You're leaving this house today." The world stopped for an instant. Even the wind seemed to fall silent. Sophia took a step back, as if the ground were sinking beneath her feet. She searched his eyes for any crack, any sign of the man she knew. But there was only darkness. "Do you really want this? I don't want to keep living with someone who lies to me, who deceives me behind my back, who smiles at me by day and betrays me by night." She shook her head, slowly, like someone watching another drown without being able to reach them. Her gaze was now dry, but her whole body trembled. A brief laugh escaped between her teeth. "Do you really think I'd be capable of that to you? It doesn't matter anymore." He picked up the pen and threw the divorce papers onto the table. "Just sign." Sophia didn't reply. She walked to the armchair, sat down in silence, and read every line. Her fingers hesitated as she took the pen. For a moment, Daniel thought she would refuse, that she would make a scene, that she would scream. But no. She signed. The sound of the pen tearing the paper was louder than any scream. Mrs. Elena stood up, satisfied. The play was over. Sophia stood up. She walked to the stairs, picked up the suitcase that was already packed, as if she had foreseen everything, and paused at the door. She didn't look at her mother-in-law. She didn't look at the living room. Only at Daniel. Her voice was low, almost broken, but firm. Someday, you'll realize what you chose to believe. And she left. The door closed with a dry thud, like the end of a chapter no one wanted to write. Inside, Daniel remained still, staring at the wooden door. Inside, his heart was still burning, but there was something strange about that fire. Something that hurt more than rage. Something that was, perhaps, doubt. But he didn't know it yet. Not yet. The betrayal. What would you do if false accusations destroyed your life like this? Share your immediate reactions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the shocking revelations to come. The evening descended upon Seville with a suffocating weight, and the house, now without Sophia, seemed larger. Empty, as if the rooms knew something essential had left and wouldn't return soon. Years later, the memory of that afternoon still replayed in Daniel's dreams with the precision of a trained nightmare. He always woke up at the same part, the door closing, the suitcase descending the steps, the sound of the lock clicking, and a silence that seemed to linger inside him even today. It was on an ordinary day, one of those that promise nothing and end up changing everything, that Daniel entered St. Jude's Hospital. He was there to accompany a client from his law firm who had felt unwell during a meeting. He didn't even know the hospital itself, but the name sounded strange. St. Jude's, a word he had avoided for a long time. As he waited in the lobby, a disinfectant aroma mixed with the bittersweet scent of plastic flowers filled the air. Children cried in some corner, nurses passed with folders, and a constant murmur permeated the place with an invisible tension. Daniel was trying not to sink into his own thoughts when something, or someone, paralyzed him. She passed, without seeing him. With an ID badge hanging from her neck, a folder clutched to her chest, and her hair tied in a hurried bun. Sophia. The world seemed to tilt sideways. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a hallucination. It was her steady walk, her gaze forward, her shoulders carrying more than just the work shift. Daniel stood up, unsure if he should call her name. Something inside him pounded. Her name burned in his throat, but he didn't call out. He just followed her, like someone dragged by an invisible thread. She turned right, towards the pediatric ward. She entered a door, and it was there, in front of that very door, that Daniel stopped and saw. A child, alone, sitting on a high bench, his feet dangling in the air as if counting the seconds. His face slightly turned, his eyebrows arched in a familiar way. The same type of nose, the slightly tilted chin. But what froze Daniel was his gaze, that gaze. It was like seeing himself at 8 years old. The child also saw him, and looked back, unafraid, as if time had stopped for the two of them to study each other. The child's eyes narrowed, as if trying to fit an impossible memory. Daniel felt a blow to his chest. It couldn't be. Or could it? The door opened. Sophia came out with a chart in her hand and stopped when she saw him. Her eyes widened, her body tensed. For a second, neither of them said anything. The hospital's silence seemed to absorb even the sounds around them. "Daniel?" she said, in a tone that was more shock than nostalgia. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at the child again, then at her. It took effort to say, "Is he my son?" His voice came out rough, almost breathless, as if it had been stored for years in a tight box. Sophia didn't reply immediately. Her face hardened as if putting on a mask. Her eyes, once sweet, now had something of steel. Even so, they trembled. She took a deep breath. "Yes, he is." Daniel placed his hand on the back of a chair. He needed to hold on to something. The child still watched them, with a curiosity only children have, and a silence that hurt more than screams. "Why, Daniel?" she began, but interrupted herself. She wanted to ask everything at once. "Why did you never tell me? Why did you disappear? Why now?" Sophia lowered her gaze and spoke before he could ask. "That doesn't change anything, Daniel." The words were cold, like someone building a wall before the other tries to climb it. She took a step forward, as if to end the conversation there. The child instinctively stood up. He ran towards her and grabbed her hand. "Mummy?" She lowered her face and smiled at him. A forced smile, but still tender. "It's okay, Leo. This gentleman, I've just known him a long time." Daniel felt a knot when he heard the name. "Leo." He opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Sophia looked at him again. There was pain in her eyes, but also a firmness he had never seen. She was the woman he knew, and someone else at the same time. A woman who had been forced to become tougher than she wanted. "He needs some tests, and I have work to do," she said, her tone sharp. "Sophia, wait." Daniel took a step. "I don't understand why you—" "Not here." She interrupted him. "Not in front of him." Her voice came out in a dry whisper. Her eyes allowed no reply. Leo still watched them, his brow furrowed, trying to understand what that man meant. He had seemed clear, but children don't reason with logic. They feel. And at that moment, Daniel saw something even more devastating. The child trusted her completely, and he was a stranger. "Can I see him again?" Sophia pressed her lips together, thoughtful, her heart at war with caution. Then she said in a low voice, "He has anemia. We're coming back on Friday. If you're still here, maybe." She turned and walked down the hallway. Leo looked back once more, and Daniel, for the first time in years, felt excluded from something that was his, something that carried his blood, his name, but not his story. He stood there, motionless, the echo of their footsteps fading in the distance, the name Leo swirling in his mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing, and in his chest, an emptiness, the kind of emptiness that doesn't heal with time, only with truths. A painful truth revealed. How do you think Daniel will react to this devastating discovery? What would be your first step if you were in his shoes? Share your raw emotions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the next part of this emotional roller coaster. That night, Daniel didn't go home. He drove aimlessly through the streets of Valencia until the city was just a blur behind the windshield. He parked at a high point, from where he could see the rooftops like pieces of a puzzle scattered across the darkness. And he stayed there, hands trembling on the steering wheel, his head filled with a presence that was no longer just memory. It was flesh. It was voice. It was a gaze reflected in that of a child who carried his face in miniature. Time wouldn't rewind. But the questions? Yes. Why did no one ever look for him? Oh, and that hurt more. Did they look for him after all? The next morning, Daniel didn't go to the office. He called an assistant, made up some excuse, and went straight to Seville. The drive to his parents' old house was a painful immersion into a past he had avoided for years. With each kilometer, he remembered muffled arguments, slammed doors, and the day Sophia disappeared from his life with a phrase that now sounded almost like prophecy. Someday, you'll realize what you chose to believe. That day had arrived. Mrs. Elena's house was still the same. Beige facade, dark wooden windows, artificial flowers at the entrance. But now it seemed smaller. Or perhaps it was he who no longer fit there. He knocked on the door twice. Nothing. He tried the handle. It was unlocked. He entered without ceremony, and the smell hit him hard. Old perfume, eucalyptus, something too sweet. Everything the same, everything suffocating. He called for his mother, but only an echo replied. He walked to her room, stopped in front of the desk. The antique furniture, with its golden handles and varnished wood, had always had a lock. He knew it, and he also knew where the key was. Behind the mirror, taped in place. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside were old papers, bills, yellowed letters, a silver brooch, and then an envelope. White, addressed to him. In handwriting he would recognize even with his eyes closed. Sophia. The date in the corner was 3 months after the divorce. He had never seen that letter. Never. Daniel opened it slowly, as if something might explode from it. Daniel, I'm writing this letter not knowing if you'll ever read it. I've tried calling you. I've even gone to your door. But Mrs. Elena told me you were away. Perhaps you are. Or perhaps you don't want to see me. I would understand. But I need to tell you this, even if you decide to tear this letter up when you finish it. I didn't do anything they said. I swore it to you, and I still swear it now, that there was no betrayal, that it was all a trap. I loved you. I still love you. And there's something you need to know, even if you decide to tear this letter up when you finish it. I'm pregnant. Daniel felt his stomach churn. The letter fell to the floor, but he didn't. He couldn't fall. Not now. He opened all the drawers, all the locks, and there was more. More envelopes, all addressed to him, each with different dates. A flow of desperation saved, censored, silenced for years. It was true. She had tried. He went to the kitchen. He needed water. But the taste of guilt already dried his throat. The sound of the door opening jolted him from his trance. Mrs. Elena entered, dragging a bag, talking to herself about the traffic. Seeing her son there, with the envelope in his hand, she froze. And then, for a second, the mask fell. You came to see your mother without warning? Why didn't you give me these letters? The question was a dry blow. She hesitated, tried to smile. What letters? Daniel showed her the envelope, Sophia's name clearly written on the front. His hands were trembling, but his gaze was firmer than ever. Don't lie. Not now. Mrs. Elena composed herself. She went to the sink, took a glass, filled it with water, drank. And then she blurted out, I did what was best for you. Best? His voice rose. Hiding that I had a son was best? She turned completely. There was a bitter shadow in her eyes. That woman would have destroyed your life. You were blind for her. I had to open your eyes. And for that, you lied. You separated me from her. You kept me from my own son. Mrs. Elena approached, as if trying to calm a wounded animal. Daniel, she was going to drag you into a life of misery. You were about to leave everything for her. Your career, your future, for a woman who had no family. She had me. The shout echoed through the house. A heavy silence fell between the two. Daniel's breathing was ragged, as if each revealed truth tore the air from him. He looked at his mother as if he had never truly seen her before. You destroyed everything. She tried to take his hand. He pulled away. Get out of my way. Daniel, get out. The door slammed shut behind him with an ancient fury, the same fury with which years ago he himself had thrown Sophia out. History was repeating, but now he was on the other side. The chilling truth is revealed. How do you think Daniel will cope with this devastating betrayal from his own mother? What would you do in his position? Share your strongest emotions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the next gripping chapter. He returned to Valencia driving like a man on fire. His eyes fixed on the road, his mind in a whirlwind of images. The letter. The child? Sophia's look when she said, "That doesn't change anything." He arrived at his own house like someone invading an alien place. He needed to see more, to know everything. He rummaged through old boxes, forgotten accounts. He found the landline number he used at that time, and then a call history. Several missed calls, a number he didn't recognize. When he dialed it on his mobile, the name that appeared was like a blow to the chest. Sophia. And then, as if something screamed inside him, Daniel picked up his phone and called. She answered on the third ring. "Daniel?" Her voice wasn't surprised. It was hard. She was already expecting him. "I found the letters." Silence. "My mother. She lied to me. She broke everything. She prevented me from knowing." Sophia didn't reply. He continued. "You tried to tell me. You tried, and I didn't want to listen." His voice broke. For the first time, he cried. On the other side, the sound of her breathing. And then, a phrase that was not a pardon, but also not a punishment. "Do you understand now?" Yes, now he understood. But understanding was only the beginning. 2 days later, Daniel was back at St. Jude's Hospital. Not by chance, not by fate, but by urgency. Sophia had called. Her voice was firm, but her eyes in the video call showed what her mouth didn't say. Fear. Leo was sick. An infection had advanced too quickly. His body wasn't responding well to antibiotics, and blood tests revealed a worrying pattern. The diagnosis hit like a fist. Severe aplastic anemia. The rare kind. The kind where the body stops producing blood cells. The kind that needs a donor. Daniel arrived at the hospital before dawn, sleepless, unsure if he still had the right to be there, but with an unwavering certainty that he couldn't not be there. Sophia was waiting for him at the entrance to the pediatric area, her hair loose, her eyes sunken. Seeing him, she said nothing. There was no hug, no reproach, only a slight nod. "He's asleep," she said, guiding Daniel down the silent corridor. The room was small, but clean. Beige curtains, a side table, a worn armchair by the bed, where Leo slept with his arm connected to the IV. The child's paleness hurt his eyes. Daniel couldn't recognize the boy who had looked at him with distrust days ago. That little one now seemed too fragile to carry any judgment. "The doctor said the transplant needs to happen soon. We need compatibility." Daniel just nodded. He didn't ask what he already knew. He didn't make a scene. He just offered his arm, his vein, his blood. The tests were done that same day, and by late afternoon, the confirmation: compatible. Sophia didn't cry when she heard it, but her breath hitched for an instant, as if something inside her, finally, let down its guard. "Do you want to stay with him tonight?" she asked, her voice hoarse, leaning against the doorframe. "I want to," Daniel replied. That night, he sat by the bed, a thin blanket over his legs, and his eyes fixed on the child's face. He still didn't know if he could call him son without invading something sacred. But inside him, that place was already occupied. Completely. Sophia slept in the waiting room. Daniel there, alone with the child, picked up his phone. He opened old audio files, conversations he no longer responded to. He searched around the time of the divorce. He found an audio from Sophia he had never listened to. It was there, unplayed, dated 2 days after his departure. He pressed play. "Daniel, I know you won't listen to me, but I need to say it. I loved you. Your mother, she lied to you. And I tried. I swear, I tried to make you see. But now it's no longer up to me. I'm tired. But I wanted you to know that what we had, it was real. Even if it ended like this." Daniel closed his eyes. Her voice was a blow, a nostalgia drenched in pain. Time returned everything now, in slow motion. The coldness with which he doubted, the shouting, the divorce signed with arrogance. All that time, she had told the truth. He opened his phone gallery. He looked for photos. He learned to see the details. Sophia smiling with him in an old restaurant, her hand on her belly, months before the end. A photo he had ignored. Now he saw she was already pregnant. The world didn't change suddenly. It was he who hadn't known how to look. On the morning of the procedure, the hospital seemed frozen in a special kind of silence. Daniel changed, lay down on the gurney, received local anesthesia. The process wouldn't be simple, but he didn't hesitate. The needle penetrated his marrow, extracting the most intimate part of his body, and he accepted every second of pain as part of the sentence. In the next room, Sophia waited. Alone? Her shoulders slumped, her eyes red. Not from the illness. She dealt with that as a mother. But from his presence. Now. There. Giving himself. Too late to erase the past. Too soon to promise a future. "He's going to be okay," the doctor said, hours later. "With time, his body will react, and he'll get better." Daniel left the room pale, unsteady, but with a genuinely sincere smile for the first time. "Thank you," Sophia whispered. Unable to look at him for long. "I'm the one who thanks you, for letting me help." In the room, Leo woke up. He looked at the two of them, still groggy. "Mummy, who is he?" The question came without resentment, just curiosity. Sophia took his hand, looked at Daniel, as if asking permission. He nodded with an almost imperceptible gesture. "He's someone who cares about you very much, and who is here for you." Leo didn't reply. He just closed his eyes, tired. He turned his face to one side, and Daniel approached carefully. He stroked his hair with the tips of his fingers, with a reverent respect, as if he were made of glass, as if he were his own. In that touch, he felt something different. It wasn't remorse, nor guilt. It was a kind of love that hurt, a critical decision made, a life saved, and the first steps towards a new kind of family. What do you think this act of sacrifice means for Daniel and Sophia's future? Share your heartfelt reactions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the emotional path ahead. The next night, Daniel returned home. His body still felt the extraction, but the pain that mattered was different. He picked up his phone and replayed the audio. Then, he opened a messaging app and searched for his last conversation with Sophia, dated 3 years ago. A happy birthday that she never replied to. Now he typed, his fingers trembling. "Sophia, I'm here. I'm not leaving again." And he set his phone aside. He didn't expect a reply. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He just wanted to stay. For the first time. The pain of guilt, he had understood, doesn't disappear, but it transforms into a silent plea, into a gesture, into a present given with blood. Because, sometimes, love doesn't return as it was. It returns as an opportunity. The hospital slept. But not everyone managed to. In the back courtyard, where few passed at night, there was a wooden bench twisted by time. Daniel was sitting there, his coat open over his shoulders, his hands clasped, and his gaze lost in a darkness that offered no answers. The city breathed in the distance, indifferent. Car headlights cut through the silent road. But for him, the whole world narrowed to that dim light over the emergency room door, and to what Sophia still hadn't said, or to what she no longer wanted to say. He heard footsteps before he saw her. She wasn't running, nor hesitating, just walking, like someone who knows they have to be there, even if they don't yet know why. Seeing him, she said nothing. She stopped a meter away, her arms crossed. Her expression was tired, but there was no anger in her eyes. Only exhaustion. Only defense. He gestured with his head, offering her space on the bench. She hesitated, then sat down, but far enough away to make it clear it wasn't intimacy. It was just a need to listen. "I haven't slept since the day I saw you two," Daniel said, in a low voice, without drama. "Since that first look from Leo, I've never seen something so clear." Sophia didn't reply. Her breathing was slow, heavy. But he continued. "I'm not saying this to apologize. I know it changes nothing. But if there's one thing that hurts me more than anything, it's that I saw what he needed, and I saw that it wasn't me." She looked straight ahead, not facing him. "And yet you came?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I would do anything for him. And for you too, if you'd let me." She let out a brief laugh. There was no humor in it, only disbelief. "Daniel, you had years to wake up. And now you show up after everything, expecting me to simply accept it?" He turned his face to her, his eyes filled with a weariness that wasn't physical. "I'm not expecting you to accept it, just to listen. Let me speak now. You've spoken alone for years." Sophia shifted on the bench, uncomfortable with the weight of his words. But she didn't interrupt him. "I was weak. I let myself be carried away by anger, pride, by my mother. And that's not an excuse. It's cowardice, pure and simple. I chose to believe what avoided me from thinking. It was easier to blame you than to admit that perhaps the mistake was mine." She hugged herself, as if she needed to protect herself. "You trusted me enough to call me for Leo." Daniel's voice faltered, but he continued. "And I can't pretend that means nothing. Because even with all that they did to you, with all that I did, you still let a part of me be close to him. That says more than any 'I'm sorry.'" "I came for him," she said, looking at him for the first time. "And when all this passes, I'm going to leave again." There was silence, one of those that hurt. Daniel lowered his head, his voice lower than ever. "Then let me do this right. Let me show you that if I had known the truth, I would have stayed. Let me show you that if I had known he existed, I would have done everything differently. That I wouldn't have let go of your hand." Sophia remained silent for so long that he thought she would get up and leave. But that wasn't what she did. "What exactly do you want to prove to me?" Her voice was now sharper. "That you're a good father, a good man? That you're sorry? All of that. It doesn't work like that, Daniel. You can be sorry, but that doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't erase how you made me feel. The days I tried to reach you while you ignored me. It doesn't erase the months of fear raising a child alone, nor the nights pretending to be okay because I had no one left. None of that disappears because you now want to do it right." "I know it doesn't disappear," he replied, with a lump in his throat. "But I'm still here, and I'm not leaving." She closed her eyes. For a second, her armor cracked, but she immediately recomposed herself. "You say that now? When he needs you? When guilt weighs on you? And afterwards? When he gets better? When your life goes back to normal? Do you think I'm that kind of man? I don't know who you are anymore." The phrase was spoken coldly, but without hatred. Only truth. Then get to know me again, he said. Give me that chance, even if it's just so you can hate me for a good reason and not for the version my mother sold you. She looked at the ground, her brow furrowed. There was a war in her eyes, and he knew it, because for years he pretended that war didn't exist. Now he saw it. Daniel, I'm not asking you to come back, nor to pretend you've forgiven me. Just let time do what I couldn't. Listen to you. The silence was now lighter, less heavy. Sophia looked at him, finally, and something in her eyes was different. It wasn't surrender. It was doubt. But it wasn't rejection. He likes strawberry ice cream, and he hates beetroot. Me too, Daniel replied without smiling. He's afraid to sleep in the dark. I was too. She let out her breath slowly. Her hand rested on her lap, trembling. He extended his, but not to touch her, just to show he was there, and that he wouldn't hide anymore. Sophia didn't take it, but she didn't pull away either, and maybe that, for now, was enough. A fragile truce, built on honesty and a child's love. What do you think this new, cautious path will mean for Daniel and Sophia? Can true healing begin now? Share your hopes and fears in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the next tender developments. 2 days later, Sophia accepted the invitation. She didn't say it with words. She didn't confirm it by message. She simply let Daniel know where they would be. She sent the location of Retiro Park with a dry phrase, "If you want, come." It was the most she could offer at that moment, and Daniel understood. He didn't insist, didn't demand. He just went. He arrived early, with 2 bags in his hands, one with fruits, the other with an old-fashioned folded paper airplane. He walked to the indicated spot on the map, near the lake, where the old trees shaded the ground and families passed with children and bicycles. There they were. Sophia sitting on a bench, her arms crossed over her lap, and Leo standing, watching the ducks. The child saw him first. He ran towards him, still not calling him Dad, but without distrust. It was curiosity mixed with a budding affection. Daniel knelt. "I brought you something." He handed him the airplane. Leo turned it in his hands, curious, and then launched it. The paper flew clumsily and fell a few meters away, but the child laughed as if it had crossed the entire sky. Sophia also laughed, unintentionally. Daniel noticed, and that hurt, in a good way, like something returning after being outside the body for a long time. "Thanks for coming," she said, just as he sat down beside her, still maintaining a space between the two. "I didn't know if you'd come. I said I wouldn't run away again." Leo was now running after the airplane, refolding the creases and trying new launches. Daniel watched him intently, every movement, every expression. He seemed to absorb everything, as if he wanted to reclaim the years lost in silence. "He's laughing," Daniel murmured. "I don't think I've ever really seen him like that." "Not really." Sophia crossed her arms, her eyes fixed on the child. He was silent for a long time after the first collapse. He wouldn't eat or play. He slept little. Sometimes he would wake up saying he was afraid of disappearing. He was 7 years old. Can you imagine that? No, me neither at the time. I just did what I could. But there were nights when I only cried when he was asleep, and I prayed for someone to hear me. "I didn't hear," Daniel said, in a tone that didn't ask for forgiveness. It only acknowledged the absence. She looked at him, and for the first time there was less pain in her eyes. There was still a scar, but less of an open wound. "There's something I saved for you," he said, taking an envelope from his bag. It was a thick bundle of folded, yellowed papers, some stained. "I found it among my mother's things. I didn't have the courage to open it before. I didn't know what to do with them, but they're yours." Sophia hesitated. She took them carefully. She read the first one unhurriedly. Her handwriting. Her time. "Daniel, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but the silence is suffocating me, and you're still the only one who could make me breathe." She couldn't continue. She went from letter to letter, fragments of a past that had screamed to be heard. Some were stained with smeared ink, perhaps from tears. Others seemed written in a single breath. I thought those words had died, that no one would ever read them. I read them, all of them, last night. And it hurt. Because they were right. Because I should have listened to you. Because I knew you weren't lying. And yet I chose to believe what was more comfortable for me. She lowered her gaze, took a deep breath. "Did you suffer?" "Yes, but not like you. Mine was absence. You lived the real weight. You raised a son without me. You faced everything alone. And yet you came when he needed me." Sophia put the letters back in the bag. She looked at Leo again, now sitting on the ground, disassembling the airplane to try to put it back together better. It was as if nothing there was broken, as if he had already accepted what the two of them were still learning to digest. "He asked me if you were really his dad. What did you tell him?" "That you were, and that maybe he could discover for himself who you are beyond that." "And what do you hope he discovers?" She looked at Daniel. The golden light of the afternoon filtered through his hair, giving him that soft glow she remembered from before. When he would enter the room, when he would sit on the edge of the bed, when he swore they could still be fine. "I hope he discovers if you can be trusted, that he knows without me having to say it, if he can count on you when he has a fever, when he cries, when he makes mistakes. I want to be all of that." "I wanted many things too, Sophia." They fell silent. The sound of the park filled the space between them. Children laughing, couples talking softly, a dog barking in the distance. It was as if the world had slowed down, allowing them to breathe together after so long of suffocating. That night, Sophia agreed to have dinner at his apartment. It wasn't a gesture of emotional reunion, just the practicality of not having to go back early, as Leo would still be under observation the next morning. But even though it was something simple, Daniel understood its meaning. She sat at the table. Leo slept wrapped in a blanket on the sofa, the television on. At the lowest volume, the apartment was clean but impersonal, like someone who inhabits but doesn't belong. She noticed it. Daniel pretended not to. "He's going to wake up with a backache," she commented, pointing to the sofa. "I thought about offering him my room, but I supposed you'd prefer him to be near the living room." "You supposed right." They ate in silence for a few minutes. The dish was simple. Pasta with olive oil, garlic, and herbs, but hot and quietly respectful. Daniel let time lead. It was he who broke the silence. "Were you with anyone during this time?" She paused, chewed calmly, wiped her lips with her napkin before answering. "I tried, but I always felt like I was leaving someone waiting for me, as if a part of me was still tied to something unfinished, as if each new person reminded me that there was something I hadn't buried, even after everything." He nodded, his eyes fixed on his plate. "To love another woman?" Daniel said, almost in a whisper. "I never could. I always compared. It always hurt." She took a deep breath. The weight of that sentence wasn't romantic. It was honest, real, raw. "I didn't want this to be a sad story," she murmured. "And it doesn't have to be. I don't know if it can still be transformed." He looked up. There was something in his eyes. It wasn't haste. It wasn't insistence. Only a plea to be seen as someone who learned, even if it was late. "We only write what comes. The beginning has already passed. And yet, it's still here." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was as if both knew that that night didn't demand decisions or promises, only presence. And sometimes, presence is the first act of real love, a profound conversation, and the seeds of a new beginning. What do you think the future holds for Daniel and Sophia? Can their broken past truly heal? Share your hopes and emotions in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the truly heartwarming conclusion. The weeks that followed weren't like a movie. There were no flowers left at the door, no declarations in cafes in the rain. There was silence, and one step after another. There was Leo smiling more often again, Daniel picking him up from school when he could, Sophia observing from a distance, with the care of someone protecting a still exposed wound. Even if it was healing, Daniel didn't force his presence. He simply was. He brought a sandwich for Leo's break without asking if he could. He said goodnight, even if she didn't reply. Sometimes he sat on the hospital sofa just to listen to their voices. It was the silence that had once been absent in his absence. But reconstruction also has its limits. And Sophia, despite everything, still kept her whole self under the armor of the past. That afternoon, while Daniel washed the dishes from an impromptu lunch, she entered the kitchen. She watched him in silence, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, his simple movements, the silence that demanded nothing. He turned and smiled. She didn't return the smile. "We need to talk." He dried his hands with the cloth, his expression turning serious. "About what?" "About what you want from me. From us. I don't want an us if it's just going to be a memory. I don't want to go back. I want a beginning," he said. She shook her head, slowly. "You say that now. But time doesn't go back, Daniel. And Leo, he can't suffer again. I can't risk that. Can you love me today, but what about tomorrow?" Daniel approached. Not quickly, not dramatically. Calmly, like someone respecting the pain of the person in front of him. "Tomorrow, I don't know. But today, I'm here. And tomorrow, I'll choose to be here again. And the day after tomorrow, too. Not out of obligation, but because every day I spend near him and near you reminds me of what I lost and what I can still build, if you allow it." She didn't retreat, but she also didn't yield. She just closed her eyes for an instant, as if searching for air. "You say that as if it's simple. It's not. Then why does it seem so light for you?" "Because I've already lived the worst, and I discovered that the worst wasn't losing you. It was not having listened to you, never having read your letters, not having held Leo in my arms when he was born. The worst was knowing that all of that could have been different, and that it was my fault. Carrying that isn't light. But being here is the only thing that makes the weight bearable." She looked at him in a way that mixed fear and tenderness, the same expression of someone who sees the rain coming and wants to stay, but fears getting wet again. "What if I tell you I can't believe you anymore? I won't try to convince you. I'll just be. I'll listen to you. I'll give you time." He came a little closer. He didn't touch her. He just extended his hand, a simple gesture without demand. She hesitated. She looked at his hand, looked at him, looked at the floor, and for the first time, she didn't withdraw. She allowed her own hand, trembling, to find his. The contact was slight, but enough. Daniel squeezed it gently. She didn't pull away. "I don't promise the world, Sophia, but I promise to listen to you. And if one day you leave, it will be because you decided to. Never again because I closed my eyes." She lowered her gaze. A tear fell, silent, without warning. He didn't wipe it. He didn't say anything. He just remained there, holding her hand, with the exact firmness of someone who knows that love isn't conquered. It's cared for. "And what if I can't forgive? I won't ask you that. Just that one day you managed to live without this hurting you so much." She felt it, still in silence. And something in that gesture wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no either. It was just presence. And, as he had said before, sometimes that's enough. That night, she stayed. She didn't sleep in her own room. She slept with Leo, as in the most difficult days. But she let Daniel read a story before the child fell asleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his voice trembling at first, then firm, then surrendered. "Daddy," Leo whispered at the end, sleepy. Daniel stopped. His heart pounded. Sophia looked at him and said nothing. But she bit her lip to contain something she didn't know if was pain or relief. "I'm here, son," Daniel replied. It was the first time he had heard that word, and it seemed at last that life gave him permission to deserve it. Sophia left the room without saying more. She went to the living room. She sat on the sofa, turned on the dimmest light. Daniel arrived minutes later. "Did you hear him?" "Yes. He chose to call me that. He trusted." She looked away. There was no longer any armor, only a woman who carried too much pain, and who now saw hope on the other side. "Tomorrow it's going to hurt," she said, "because tomorrow it will feel like everything could end again. And if it ends, it won't be your fault. But I'll be here, as long as you allow me." She rested her head on his shoulder. It wasn't a new beginning. It was just a rest, an interval, a now. And in that instant, that was enough. The clock showed a little after 4 in the morning when Leo stirred under the covers. The room was dark, save for a dim light filtering from the hallway, enough to cast soft shadows on the walls. He woke up slowly, like someone returning from a light but still distant place. He sat up in bed, his hair disheveled and his gaze lost, as if searching for a sound, a face, a certainty. He called softly, "Mummy?" The answer came almost instantly. Sophia entered the room with silent steps, pulling the blanket around her son's shoulders. "I'm here. Where is he?" She hesitated. She sat on the edge of the bed. The child looked around, his face serious in a way too mature for his age. "Did he leave?" Sophia ran her hand through his hair, took a deep breath. She was tired, but her love for that child still gave her strength. "Leo, he's going to leave, like the others." The question wasn't asked with resentment, nor with pain. It was just a raw doubt. One of those that children ask when they've learned too soon that trusting hurts, that leaving is always an option for adults. Daniel, who had been listening from the hallway, stopped at the door. He didn't enter immediately. He stood there, his hand resting on the frame, watching the scene that for years had only existed in dreams or in regrets. Sophia didn't reply immediately. She looked towards the hallway, saw him there, and she didn't look away. He understood. He entered, walked to the bed, knelt in front of Leo. The child watched him without blinking. The same question was still in his eyes. Daniel took a deep breath. "I want to stay," he said. "Simple, direct. If you both let me, I'm staying." Leo didn't reply, but something in him seemed to let go. His body relaxed, his brow unfurrowed. And, with a small but meaningful gesture, he leaned forward and rested his head on Daniel's shoulder. It wasn't a hug. It was a concession. And Daniel wrapped his arms around him, afraid to squeeze too tightly, afraid of not knowing how to measure an affection so new and yet so old at the same time. Sophia got up, moved back a little, but didn't leave. She stayed there, leaning against the wall, her eyes shining with a strange peace. For the first time, perhaps since everything began, she saw them together. And together, it didn't hurt. Leo whispered, "Do you promise?" "I promise. Even if I get angry? Even if you're sad?" "Even then." Sophia returned and sat beside them. Daniel looked up at her. The silence between the three of them was no longer like before. It wasn't empty. It was full. It was the sound of their hearts beating together in the same space for the first time with nothing in between. Leo fell back asleep, resting on Daniel's chest, his small body trusting without needing words. Sophia adjusted the blanket over the two of them, her fingers accidentally brushing Daniel's. Or maybe not. He didn't move. She didn't pull away. "I'm scared," she said. In a whisper, "Me too. But I'm willing to walk through it with you. Slowly. Without rushing. Without promises. Except one. I'm not leaving. I don't know how to do this. No one does. You learn." She remained silent for a few seconds, her eyes on her sleeping son. Then she looked at Daniel. "I thought I hated you. And now? Now, I just feel tired of carrying so much pain. And maybe it's time to let it go." He nodded. He took her hand, squeezed it gently. "I'll wait as long as you need. I just don't want to be away anymore." The sky outside was already beginning to change. A dull blue tone appeared on the horizon, slowly pushing the night out of the room. Daniel adjusted the pillow under Leo's head and gently laid him down. Then he got up, slowly stretching his legs. Sophia also stood up. She walked towards him. They looked at each other, unhurriedly, like someone still testing the ground. He caressed her face, a face he knew, and yet was relearning. She said nothing, but she didn't pull away. And at that instant, under the almost daylight, the three of them belonged, at last, to the same place. Without rushing, without demands, just together. Time continued, but not as before. Now it passed with more weight, more presence, more substance. It didn't rush or heal, but it molded. It was different. It was time that looked you in the eye. Leo went back to school. He brought crumpled drawings in his backpack, unfiltered questions, and the urgency to live everything that had been interrupted. Daniel picked him up twice a week, sometimes 3. Then, there were no fixed days. He simply appeared, and he stayed. Sophia, little by little, began to release her breath. Not completely. There were gestures that still carried the memory of pain, automatic movements of someone who had spent too long expecting to be left behind. But her gaze was no longer one of resistance. It was one of loving vigilance. That kind of care that survivors learn to use as armor, and, later, as a bridge. The letters Daniel had found went back into a box. They weren't burned or forgotten. They were there as witnesses of a cruel but necessary time. He didn't reread them. Neither did she. But sometimes, seeing them on the shelf, they both knew that a forgiven, though not forgotten, past lived there. One ordinary Sunday, Leo woke up with a fever. Nothing serious, but enough for Sophia to cancel plans and stay by his side all day. Daniel appeared in the late afternoon with homemade soup, freshly baked bread, a storybook about stars and the sky. Leo, sweaty and sleepy, smiled when he saw him. "You came? I told you I would." After the child fell asleep, Sophia sat on the balcony. Daniel brought 2 cups of tea. They sat in silence for long minutes. The city lights slowly emerged, mixed with the sounds of traffic and some distant music. "Sometimes I still expect the worst," she said, not looking at him directly. "It's as if my whole body still doesn't believe it's over, that the abandonment is past." "Me too," Daniel replied. "Sometimes I wake up afraid that all this is just a reckoning before the end." "And how do you deal with that?" "I get up, I see you two, and I try to be a little better than yesterday. I don't always succeed." She turned her face. Her eyes weren't teary, but they were tired of holding on. There was tenderness there, and an old rage that now was just a memory. He smiled faintly. "Do you still doubt me?" "Less than before, but I still don't know if I believe. "It's okay," he replied. "Love is also that, doubting and moving forward anyway." She rested her head on his shoulder, for the first time without hesitation, just tiredness, but also choice. Later that night, Leo woke up in the middle of the night, asked for water, and called for his daddy. Daniel got up before Sophia. He attended to the child. He returned to the room and, for the first time, didn't sleep on the sofa. She didn't ask anything. He didn't promise anything. But as he lay down, he gently brushed her fingers. A small gesture, a silent answer. And Sophia let him stay. Life didn't become a movie. Neither of them expected that. There were still difficult mornings, questions without clear answers, fears that appeared without warning, like old ghosts in new hallways. But there were also days with laughter, shared coffee, school homework with crooked drawings, random phrases spoken, like, "Mummy, he knows how to play chess, and he let me win. I didn't let you. You really won." Together. On the last Saturday of summer, they went to the beach. Leo built a castle with 2 towers, dug a moat around it, and said it was his house. When Daniel asked where his room was, the child replied, "In the middle, so you don't leave." Sophia didn't laugh. She just took Daniel's hand and remained silent. Because not every wound heals quickly. But when there is love, time doesn't erase, it simply waits. If this story touched you in any way, share it with someone who needs to believe that new beginnings are possible. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and follow other chapters where love, pain, and hope meet, just like in real life. Because sometimes, all we need is a new opportunity.